It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back here with you tonight on Wednesday. We have a lot to talk about, a lot to get into tonight. Big show. Our featured story, we're talking all about the anti-ICE shooting in Texas. Very strange turn of events. And I'm sure you've seen it today. It was big news. There was allegedly another sniper who set himself up across the street from an ICE detention facility and just started blasting, started shooting. People say indiscriminately, one shot after another. 3 people were hit. I believe at least one is dead. Strangely enough, they're all illegal immigrants. When I first heard the story, I thought this is a left-wing terrorist targeting ICE officers, and I assumed that those that were hit and killed were ICE. Well, either that's not the case or he just missed, because all the people that were shot were illegal immigrants. So go figure, you're some radical left-wing nut job. You go to shoot ICE, you actually kill the illegals that they're arresting. Not a very successful outing there for the terrorist. Now, the proof that the shooter was anti-ICE is because he wrote on the bullets in blue pen an anti-ICE message. Not unlike the other inscriptions on the other bullets used in the other left-wing shootings. What was the anti-ICE message? Anti-ICE. He wrote in blue pen, anti-ICE on the bullet. So they're getting a little bit less poetic. What was the Luigi Mangione inscription? It was like, defend, debase, something like that. And what was the shooter in Utah? He wrote, ooh, woo, notices your bulge. And this shooter, he just wrote, I hate ICE. I don't like ICE. So they're just degenerating. The inscriptions are getting worse and worse. I don't know what to make of it. So we'll talk all about that tonight. That'll be our featured story. We're also going to talk tonight about the H-1B scam. I've been telling you that we would get to it for the past couple of shows. We're going to finally get into it tonight. I'm sure at this point you now know we were told last week that we were getting this very pro-worker immigration policy. The Trump administration was supposed to impose a $100,000 per year fee for every H-1B visa holder. Every H-1B visa holder would have to pay, or rather their employer would have to pay, a $100,000 fee every single year that the visa is good. And this was supposed to be a great policy. Then we found out over the weekend that that's not what it is at all. It's not a per year fee. It doesn't apply to any of the current H-1B holders, of which there are many. And not only that, but there's also going to be various categories of H-1B workers which will be exempted from the fee, including doctors right now. So the policy sucks. And we'll talk all about that. Should be a pretty good show. Before we get into the news, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash a like button, leave a comment, let me know what you think about the show. It's been another long day for me. If you missed it, I did a major collaboration this afternoon on InfoWars. I went on the Alex Jones show, and then I went on the War Room with Harrison Smith afterward. So if you missed that, I uploaded it onto my Rumble channel. It's also on X. It's on InfoWars as well. Pretty big collaboration. We covered a lot of stuff. We talked about Charlie Kirk. We talked about Ukraine. We talked about the ICE shooter and a ton of other things. So if you missed it, check it out. I'm a little tapped. I'm not going to lie. I did 3 hours already today, 3 hours with Alex Jones, Harrison Smith, now the show. That's a lot of content. But we're locked in for a big Wednesday show. Before we get into the news, I do want to play a clip for you. I can already feel the vindication. I can taste it. I'm smelling it, anticipating the vindication. I'm wafting it gently. Vindication is coming. And in many ways, it's already here. Before we get into the news, I want to talk a little bit about Tucker Carlson's remarks at Charlie Kirk's memorial / funeral / Super Bowl / greatest thing since the coming of Jesus. I want to talk about Tucker Carlson's remarks. And maybe you've heard about this, maybe not. Tucker Carlson gave some brief remarks, about 5-10 minutes, at Charlie Kirk's memorial on Sunday. And it was extremely controversial because many are saying, people that liked the comments, people that didn't like the comments, many on the internet are saying that it was a dog whistle. At the memorial, Tucker Carlson told the story of the gospel, where he said that Jesus Christ was nailed to a cross by a bunch of hummus-eating, hook-nosed, money-changing Pharisees, and implied that that was not dissimilar from how Charlie Kirk was killed. Tucker said that Jesus Christ was in Jerusalem preaching the gospel, telling the truth, and the powers that be, the Jews in charge of Jerusalem, had to shut him up, so they killed him. And the significance of that analogy was not lost on people. Everybody said, hey, wait a second. Are you trying to say that just like how the Jews conspired to kill Jesus for telling the truth and spreading the gospel, maybe the Jews killed Charlie Kirk for telling the truth and spreading the gospel? That was the comparison that he seemed to be making. And it wasn't subtle. So many Israel-critical voices, many of the usual suspects on Twitter, they loved the comment. They said, Tucker is based. I saw Dan Bilzerian say, Tucker is naming them. He's naming them. Why can't you name them like Tucker? He said. And all of Tucker's enemies, they interpreted it the same way, but they accused him of being an anti-Semite. Why was he welcome at this event? He used the platform and a funeral to spread hatred and anti-Semitism. Well, I didn't have anything to say about it. But now that Tucker Carlson has responded to the controversy, I want to talk a little bit about his response. Tucker responded to the controversy on his show this week, and I want to play this clip for you. This was Tucker's response. So again, what was the remark? At Charlie Kirk's funeral, Tucker gets up and says, you know, this reminds me of my favorite story, where the authorities in Jerusalem wanted to shut up Jesus Christ, these hummus-eating powers that be. They didn't like that he was telling the truth, so they conspired to shut him up, and they did it by killing him. He said, and obviously they were not successful. By killing him, they only amplified his message. Again, what seems to be the implication? Charlie Kirk was another one who ostensibly was telling the truth, spreading the gospel, was killed. What's the analogy? Did the hummus eaters kill this truth teller as well? This is what Tucker Carlson had to say about that. This is what he had to say about the allegation that he was dog whistling And the dog whistle is that the Jews killed Charlie Kirk. I'm going to pull it up and we'll play the clip and we'll react to it. This is what he had to say about that allegation. We'll get it set up here for you. All right, let's listen in.
It takes a certain kind of mindset to see that as an attack on Jews. So the two groups that immediately assumed I was attacking Jews were anti-Semites and Zionists. Both of them reached the same conclusion, like instantly, oh, he's talking about the Jews. And it just points up a deep truth that we should remember, which is that anti-Semites and Zionists see the world through the same lens. Both of them think everything is about Jews, for different reasons. And that's just not my worldview. I don't think everything's about Jews. Like, I have whole periods of my day where I don't brood about Jews. I mean, it's so crazy. And it's actually the definition of craziness. You like see things that aren't there. If I was trying to make a point about Israel, I would just say it. Why wouldn't I? That's the last thing I intended to do. And I think it's very bad for your soul to become obsessed either because of hate or because of ethno-narcissism. I mean, both are kind of the same thing. They're twins with an ethnic group. It's crazy. Like, I think they're both really sick and need to pull back from this. And you do see it a lot online where everybody on, your X feed is talking about the Jews. How is that good? It's not good for the Jews. It's not good for anybody else. It's all kind of a species of mental illness. And because it doesn't reflect reality, like in real life, I have a million interests and concerns. In fact, almost all of them that have nothing to do with Jews or Israel, or it's just not an obsession for me at all. But it is an obsession for Zionists in a very unhealthy way, and an obsession for anti-Semites and also in an unhealthy way. So and they feed off each other. They're symbiotic, and one kind of helps create the other and needs the other. It's very bad. It's sick, and it's bad, again, bad for the people who engage in it and bad for this country. So I hope we can get off that topic, treat Israel like we just treat a country with overlapping interests and diverging interests. It's, it shouldn't be that different in our mind from Malaysia where you just were. A lot of things I like about it, some things I disagree with, that's okay. But it's not that. It's something really bad, I would say.
To me,
Well, music to my ears. Well. Get your pencils, get your pens. Print your apology forms. Yeah, that's right, everybody. Print your apology forms. You can download your apology form on X.com. Get your pens ready. Yeah. Well. Will you look who it is? Oh, Tucker and Candace. They're so base. Nick Fuentes sold us out. He flipped. He pivoted. Tucker named them. Well. Would you look at the time? The broken clock is right again. Would you look at the time? This broken clock is right again. Has the broken clock struck coincidentally at the correct time yet again? That's a lot of times. Would you look at the time? Hello? Yeah. Well, so it turns out all these fuck faces that got red pilled yesterday, you're telling me, they don't know what's going on? I'm shocked. I'm surprised. Oh, look at your hero, Tucker Carlson. Look at your hero. Yeah, I guess I'm the limited hangout. Tucker and Candace, they tried to tell us. Look at your hero. Look at your guy. Look at your boy. Would you look at the time? Tucker says that if you criticize Israel and if you work for Israel, that's really the same thing. Okay? If you're working for a foreign country raping America, that's the same as if you have a problem with that. He says the only people that think that Tucker is an anti-Semite himself, dog whistling, is anti-Semites and Zionists because they are so mentally ill and sick and deranged and unhealthy that they are preoccupied with Jews and they see it everywhere, even where it doesn't exist. He said that's a species of mental illness and it's bad for everybody and it's time for everybody to pull away. He said, and as a matter of fact, those Zionists and those anti-Semites are in a symbiotic relationship. They need each other. They feed off of each other. Now, here's a couple of few things about what Tucker said. In the first place, I told you so. Firstly, I told you so. Secondly, I fucking told you so. Well, look, first of all, okay, actually, let's relax and be serious. First of all, I did tell you so. There is all the difference in the world between somebody who says that we have a neocon problem, that we have a Likud problem, that we have a Netanyahu problem, a Zionist problem, and someone that says we have a Jewish problem. All the difference in the world. And I have been telling you, I have been saying this for months, for years. Tucker, Blumenthal, Candace, they are very clearly in the former camp. Everybody believes that these people are red-pilled on our side. To the extent that they are limiting what they're telling you, it's because they're dog whistling. They're silently signaling to you that they're more based than they really are. Well, here is, from the horse's mouth, from the man himself, Tucker Carlson is saying, I am not dog whistling. I am not anti-Israel. I am not anti-Jewish. And as a matter of fact, if you think I am, you're mentally ill. You're a mentally ill anti-Semite. The only people who could possibly think, Tucker says, that I am dog whistling are people that are so perversely preoccupied and fixated on Jews that you must be crazy. You must be deranged, unhinged, obsessed, so much so that you're seeing it where it isn't really there because it isn't there. Tucker says, I'm preoccupied with so many other things, mostly everything other than Israel. We should treat Israel like any other country. So I think this is about as explicit as it gets. That's 2 minutes of Tucker saying, I'm not concealing my views, I'm not dog whistling, and telling us explicitly what my views are I believe that Israel should be treated like another country. I'm not preoccupied with that. And if you are preoccupied with that, you are mentally ill and a hater. Now, maybe this sounds familiar. This is exactly how Tucker characterized me in July. When Tucker and Candace did their show about me, gossiping about me, what did Tucker Carlson say? He said, I am a weird, creepy, hateful anti-Semite who is poisoning the well for real America First voices like himself. He said, I'm a weird, creepy, hateful anti-Semite. He said the same thing at Turning Point USA. Remember his controversial appearance at Turning Point, which is apparently why Charlie Kirk was killed? He said, we have to talk about Epstein because if we don't, we are handing control over that narrative to subterranean, creepy, hateful, real anti-Semites. That's the chosen language he uses. Candace Owens said the same thing when she had me on her show. She said, you hate Jews for being Jewish. You hate Dave Smith for being Jewish. Why do you hate Jews for being Jewish? She said, it's Israel, it's Zionists. Okay? So in the first place, let's be very clear about what Tucker is and what he isn't. Tucker is a restrainer. He believes that the United States should leave the Middle East and hand off its security responsibilities to Israel. okay? Tucker, on the contrary, is not anti-Israel. Forget about anti-Jewish. He is not anti-Israel. He wants Israel and Saudi Arabia, which is controlled by Israel, to run the Middle East on our behalf so that we could go fight a war with China. That's where he's coming from. That's the reason he doesn't want us to fight in Iran, because he wants us out so Israel can take over. That's why he's critical of the neocons, because insofar as the neocons and the Likudniks and Netanyahu want us to fight Iran, it prevents us from pivoting to Asia. But he is not anti-Israel. He wants them to take over the security responsibilities of that all-important Rimland region. Okay? That's what he is. What he is not is anti-Jewish, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, in any way, shape, or form. That's number one. Number two, let's actually dig into what he is saying in the clip, because this is really important. Tucker says something, and this is an idea that you hear over and over again. And pay attention, because you will see this in the future if you're active on Twitter, if you're active in these circles. Tucker said that Zionists and anti-Semites are like evil twins. He said because the Ben Shapiros, the Mark Levins, the Jewish supremacists, hardcore pro-Israel people, Israeli spies, he said they, like the anti-Semites, people like me, people like Dan Bilzerian, people like whoever, he said what they have in common is they both are preoccupied with Jews. The Zionists are ethno-narcissists, ethnic narcissists, meaning they only care about their ethnicity. They put their ethnicity first. They're supremacists. They're chauvinistic, whatever you want to say. He said, and anti-Semites ascribe a kind of superpower to the Jews. And in that sense, they're just as preoccupied in opposition to the Zionists. He said, so they're like evil twins. And what they have in common is they view the world through a lens that Jews are all important and all powerful. It's like a weird horseshoe. He said, and all the normal people are on the other side where they don't really think too much about it. They don't talk too much about it. They're not preoccupied with it. They're normal. It is Zionists and their enemies, the anti-Semites, that are mentally ill, unhinged, not living in reality, preoccupied with something to the point where they're imagining things, and it's everybody else that's normal and focused on everything else and is not schizophrenic in that way. He says also, it's not just that they're evil twins, they form something like a dyad. They feed off of each other. There's this reciprocal symbiotic relationship. The anti-Semites are hating on the Jews, and that justifies the Jews' paranoia and their defensiveness. If there is rampant anti-Semitism, then that justifies Jewish terrorism, the Zionist cause, Jewish wars, Jewish censorship. And if there are Jewish wars and censorship, then that justifies anti-Semites critiquing them. And if anti-Semites are critiquing them and attacking them, that justifies Jews protecting themselves. He says, so it's the snake eating its own tail. It forms this symbiotic, vicious cycle, this relationship. Well, let's say it another way. Let's talk about what is real. Let's talk about what we are not imagining. What we are not imagining is that the State Department is controlled by Israel. How do we know that? Because the State Department is run by Marco Rubio. And Marco Rubio has been a pawn of the Israel lobby since he entered the U.S. Senate and even before that. And Marco Rubio is also now in control of the National Security Council. And the National Security Council is responsible for briefing the president, giving him military options. It synthesizes all the information from the Pentagon, the State Department, and the intelligence community. We're not imagining that. That's real. We're not imagining that Larry Fink is a Jewish Zionist and he controls BlackRock, the most powerful, influential financial institution in the world, the largest asset manager with the most assets under management of any private entity in the world. Larry Fink is now running the World Economic Forum. Larry Fink has a relationship with Bill Ackman, the Jewish Zionist billionaire who got the president of Harvard fired and replaced with a practicing Jewish doctor because he believed that Harvard was not doing enough to combat anti-Semitism. The list goes on and on and on. These are just a few examples. Jewish Zionists run our State Department. They run the National Security Council. They run BlackRock. They run the World Economic Forum. They run Harvard. They are the presidents of 5 out of 8 Ivy League universities. They run 3 or 4 out of 5 of the major media conglomerates in the United States. They run the 3 biggest talent agencies in the U.S. media business. Record labels, hedge funds, major banks. They have on both sides of the aisle entities like the Republican Jewish Congress, but also J Street. AIPAC put $100 million into the cycle in 2024 to depose anybody that voted against foreign aid to Israel. This is just a survey, a quick, cursory, brief survey of the things that we are not imagining that Jews, Jewish Zionists have extraordinary influence over, and which they use their influence to benefit themselves to the detriment of America. Now, what you could describe this as is a hostile and alien force controlling America. If there is a hostile alien force controlling America and its elite institutions, should we not be preoccupied with disempowering that force? As Americans, as people of any nation for that matter, but especially as Americans, should we not be preoccupied with freeing ourselves, with our independence, with our sovereignty, with overturning, reversing, combating this hostile alien force ruling over us? Well, Tucker says that if there's a hostile force controlling our country, and if you fight that hostile force, you're actually the same. The invading hostile force and those that are fighting against it are actually the same because they're both obsessed with that hostile alien force. So let's say, for example, that an alien spaceship came out of the sky and enslaved humanity. And humanity took up arms and said, we need to destroy the mothership. We need to free ourselves from this alien invasion. We would both be part of the same horseshoe. The aliens and the human beings would both be schizophrenic, mentally ill, deranged people, imagining things that don't exist. And normal people would be ignoring the occupation and pretending that nothing has ever changed. They'd be talking about other stuff. They'd be talking about taxes. They'd be talking about sports. They'd be talking about hookup culture. They'd be talking about feminism and abortion and immigration. That's what normal people be doing. A home invader breaks into your house, puts a gun in your face, says, hey, give me all your valuables. Hey, what are you, some kind of mentally ill lunatic? Just ignore him. Treat that guy like any other guy. Yeah, we'll get the valuables in a second. Can we talk about something else? Like, why isn't the garbage been taken out to the curb? Who is not washing the dishes here? Yeah, I know there's someone breaking into our house, holding a loaded gun in our face. We need to treat that guy like any other guy, like our neighbors, like some other person. What, are you crazy? Of course we have to be preoccupied with this. It's overt. It's overt. It's in your face. And by the way, this is the obstacle for everything else. Like we just talked about before, why is it that we have this mass migration problem? Could it be because we could not allocate money for a border wall? Because last year Republicans needed to expedite foreign aid to Israel first? Might that be part of the problem? Why is our country bankrupt? Why is our country distracted? Could it be because for 20 years we've been fighting another country's wars? Why is it that we don't have free speech? Could it be because a group like the ADL has literally created the guidelines, the research, the software, the algorithms to target anybody that criticizes Israel, Jewish power, racial diversity? What do you mean? What do you mean when you say that the people critiquing the occupation are just as bad as the occupiers? What do you mean when you say that the people fighting the occupation are mentally ill and just as bad as the people occupying us? How is one feeding the other? The invaders and the people defending our homeland from the invasion are actually just helping one another in an endless cycle. Hopefully, the end of the cycle is when we win and they lose and we free our country. And I got a news flash for you. If the so-called anti-Semites, if the so-called mentally ill anti-Semites that are apparently of the same species as the Zionists, if we won, we would solve the problem. We would take power back from the ADL and have free speech. We would take power back from AIPAC and we would have government of, by, and for the American people. We would take the power back from the entity that has influenced the State Department and we would have a foreign policy that benefits Americans. And there'd be no snake eating its tail. There'd be no reciprocity. We would just finish it. We would just end the occupation of America. Not violently, not in a sick way, not in a deranged, inhumane way. Politically, we would wrest control over our country back from people that are putting their community, their nation, their foreign country before ours. And until that happens, should we not be preoccupied with doing exactly that? What else could you be talking about at a time like this? Should we be talking about Klarna? Should we be talking about credit cards and medical debt? Should we be talking about UFOs, another topic that he's quite fond of? Should we be talking about demon attacks? What do you mean? So I saw this clip, and this is just a reminder for all these people that have said, you don't believe Charlie Kirk was killed by Israel. Tucker and Candace do. First of all, no, they don't. Second of all, this is what controlled opposition looks like. This is what controlled opposition sounds like. That's what it actually looks and sounds like. When someone is telling you you're an anti-Semite, when someone is telling you you're deranged, you're mentally ill, when someone is telling you, I don't think about Jews every day, I'm thinking about everything else. We should treat Israel like every other country. If Israel was like every other country, then maybe we would treat them like that, but they're not like any other country. There is literally no other country on earth like them. There is no other country on earth that we treat like we treat them. So what are you talking about? He said we should treat them like Malaysia. Really? That just sounds like you're playing dumb. So anyway, I saw that clip and it's like, wow. And this makes me really suspicious of some of the insinuations that were made. Now, I'm not talking about me, but about Charlie Kirk. Because like I said, from the beginning with that Charlie Kirk narrative, it was coming from three people: Max Blumenthal, Candace Owens, and Tucker. They were all pushing that. They were all insinuating that. They're all clearly creating the perception that Netanyahu had something to do with it. And every single one of them has completely backed off of that. Each and every one of them has said, no, I don't believe Israel had anything to do with it. But they heavily implied it. They wanted us to think that. And then within a week or two, they said, no, I don't believe that. I never said that. And I don't believe that now. And then they start saying stuff like this. So I'm not sure what's going on here, but I find it very strange. And I found that clip to be very revealing and very interesting. Wouldn't you say? 2 weeks ago, Tucker was trying to insinuate that Charlie Kirk was killed for criticizing Israel. Now he comes out and says, no, I don't believe that. And actually, if you think that, you're a mentally ill anti-Semite. Really? Very interesting. So anyway, I just wanted to cover that clip. I found that very curious. Vindication, sweet, sweet vindication for all those people. And I saw that post over and over again. People said, Tucker and Candace are talking about Netanyahu, and Nick says that's not likely. Well, there's your guy. I saw Dan Bilzerian post that. Dan Bilzerian says, Tucker's calling him out. He has the courage to name them. He's based. And it's like, Dan, I've told you a million times, Tucker always does this. He always does that. Now there it is. For anybody that was confused, he said that about me. He said that about other people. And now here it is once again. But anyway, I do want to move on. I want to talk a little bit about immigration tonight. We'll talk about the H-1Bs first because I haven't gotten to this in days, but I've been meaning to. This is a big one. And we've talked about it. We talked about it last night. We talked about it a little bit on Friday. This was a big story last week. There was a press conference convened in the Oval Office with the President, Donald Trump, and the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick. And they announced a series of immigration reforms. The first and the biggest of which was a new policy for the H-1B visa program. Now, for those that don't know, just very briefly, H-1B visa is a category that was created in the 1990 Immigration Act. Before you had H visas, and those were temporary work visas. The 1990 Immigration Act created a new subset of H visas, H-1B, H-2B, which has been retired, H-1A, H-2A. And these were different types of temporary work visas for different types of jobs. H-1B is a subcategory created by that Immigration Act, and it was for specialized workers. These are for specialists. There's a cutout for specialized workers with master's degrees, but this is for workers that have specialized skills. And in particular, it is for certain jobs in certain industries where the American labor market is not meeting the demands of those specialized types of jobs. And in order to get an H-1B visa, an employer has to demonstrate that they have first tried to fill that position with American labor. You have to demonstrate we tried to hire Americans, we can't hire Americans. That is why we need to look for specialized labor from foreign countries. Now, over time, and I think maybe this was by design from the very beginning, although that is how this was sold to the American public, sounds good on paper, where the American labor market cannot meet the demands of American companies, we're going to bring in foreign labor on a temporary basis only for jobs where we're absolutely certain no Americans can fill that role, and that's going to supplement the American economy. If that's how it was sold to us in theory, that's not how it works in practice. What has happened since the 1990 Immigration Act went into effect is that H-1B, like many other types of work visas and immigration programs, has been abused. And companies and firms have found all kinds of loopholes to get around some of these requirements. And what it has become is a way to facilitate foreign labor coming into America because it is cheaper than American labor. And so one of the loopholes, for example, Elon Musk has done this. They will put a job listing for a certain role in their company in a newspaper, but they'll make the print so small and they'll bury it in the back of the paper so that nobody can possibly see it. I'm not making this up. You can look for this stuff and you can find it. These are some of the ways they get around the requirements. It's so deceptive. They'll print a help wanted ad in a paper, but they'll literally just make the font so small that it's unreadable. And then they could go to the government and they can say, look, we tried to fill the job with American labor, but nobody signed up. So we need to bring in Indians and Chinese on a temporary basis. And it has turned into a scam where they prefer foreign labor to American labor because it's cheaper. They can pay lower wages. And as long as a foreign worker is in the country on an H-1B visa, the H-1B visa is sponsored by the company itself. So the H-1B worker is completely dependent on their employer. It makes them something like a vassal, like an indentured servant. They're like a feudal peasant working on a manor, working for a feudal lord. If that worker is terminated by the company, they go back to India, they go back to China. So not only are they paid a lower wage, but you can really treat these people however you want. You don't have to give them great benefits. You don't have to have the same kind of workplace. You really can get away with anything with these people. You can overwork them, don't have to pay them overtime. You can treat these people however you want because they will do anything to be in America. So they'll work for any wage, they'll work in any environment, they'll work in any kind of conditions because they know if they get fired, it's adios. And of course, here's the real kicker. These H-1B workers, they then eventually become eligible for a green card. That means permanent residency. So if they're a good feudal peasant, and if they work for pennies on the dollar, at the end of their term here, I think it's after 6 or 7 years, then they're eligible for a green card, also sponsored by their employer, and then they're here on a permanent basis. Then they're here as lawful permanent residents. This is the scam that is being run on our country. And here is the tangible damage. What is happening now is that the job market is absolutely frozen. Nobody's getting fired, but nobody's getting hired. And so the people that are unemployed, they stay unemployed. Young Americans go to college, they pay out the ass for a STEM degree. You know how expensive it is to go to college, and that's what everybody's told. Graduate high school, go to college. It's expensive, but they say it's worth it because you need that ticket to get into the job market. And what are the young men and even the young women being told? Go to college, get a STEM degree. Don't apply for work, don't get experience. You got to saddle yourself with tons of student loans. You got to spend your prime working years, 4 years, going to school, getting a STEM degree so you can set yourself up for success. Well, what are the Silicon Valley companies doing? What are the Silicon Valley companies that are the beneficiaries of low interest rates, that are the beneficiaries of government contracts, that are the beneficiaries of favorable regulations, immigration policy, trade policy? What are they doing? Rather than give the good paying jobs, rather than providing an on-ramp into future success and giving experience to young Americans that need to pay off their loans, that want to start climbing that ladder try to rise up and get some economic mobility, instead of giving those great jobs in the most advanced sectors with the most upward potential, instead of giving those jobs to Americans, they're giving them to Indians. Because Indians are like slaves. Indians are dependent on Silicon Valley to stay here. They'll work for nothing in any conditions. And they're disposable, completely expendable. That's the H-1B program. Now, in 2016, Trump's policy towards H-1B is that we should just eradicate it altogether. Just get rid of it, scrap it. Trump's policy in 2016, he flip-flopped throughout the campaign, but ultimately, by the end of the Republican primary, he decided H-1B has to go. And during his first term, he tried to pass a ton of executive orders to reform or replace the H-1B program. There were actually dozens, maybe hundreds of executive orders aimed at reforming H-1B in his first term. In spite of that, the H-1B visa cap was met every single year. So every single year, they brought in something like 120, 140,000 H-1Bs. Even though they were trying to get rid of it, it still kept going, kept plugging along. Well, famously, what happened in 2024? Silicon Valley came in heavy for the Republicans and for Donald Trump. Elon Musk, David Sachs, Jacob Hellberg, all these Silicon Valley titans, they poured millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into Trump's campaign. And they got Trump on the All In podcast last year. They got him at a fundraiser at David Sachs' house. And in order to secure the money from Silicon Valley, they got Trump to commit to bringing in limitless student visas, worker visas, to fill up Silicon Valley with as many Indian programmers as they need to build out their companies. And this was a very contentious debate during the transition. After the election, before the inauguration, you might remember with Elon Musk and Sriram Krishnam, who was hired to be one of the technology czars in the White House. All eyes were on Trump and the H-1B policy. Is he going to stay true to the America First labor policy of 2016 and eradicate H-1B? Or is he going to completely betray America First, destroy the cap, and bring in limitless H-1Bs on behalf and at the behest of Silicon Valley? That was the question. Now, last week, there was a meeting in the Oval Office regarding the H-1B visa program, and they made an announcement. They said that they're changing the rules for H-1B, and they're going to impose a $100,000 per year fee for every H-1B visa holder. And that's a game changer. It's not ideal. The ideal policy is that you scrap H-1B. We don't need any more temporary workers to take specialist jobs from Americans. Think about it. The job market is anemic. It's frozen. Young people are dying out here. You have inflation. You have student loans. People can't afford a house. And at the same time, nobody could even get on the on-ramp of getting a job. And we're bringing in 120,000 H-1B visas this year alone. That's a huge problem. Why do we need them? Give the jobs to American college graduates. Give the jobs to American specialists. It's like inexcusable at this point. Nobody's hiring, and yet we're hiring 140,000 Indians this year. It's not acceptable. So ideally, you just scrap it. Maybe this is the next best thing. Trump says that for H-1B, the employer is going to have to pony up and pay $100,000 per application. Now, for context, the previous fee was $2,000 to $5,000. Why is this the next best thing? If the problem with H-1B is that it is a pipeline for cheap labor, imposing a $100,000 fee makes the cheap foreign labor very expensive. Why is Silicon Valley trying to flood the zone with Indians? It's because the Indian labor is cheaper than American labor. That's why they want it. They're cheaper, they're more compliant. So if you start charging Silicon Valley $100,000 per year, foreign labor is no longer cheap. American labor just became the cheap labor. If you got to pay an Indian H-1B visa holder a salary and then pay them six figures on top of that, well, forget about it. Foreign labor is no longer cheap. Now they're going to go for the American labor. But the reason that that's effective is because it's annual. If it's annual, then that means now there's a $100,000 per year tax in addition to the salary. Now nobody's going to want to hire foreign unless it's absolutely necessary. Unless you absolutely cannot get that labor in America. And so when this announcement was made on Friday, everybody celebrated, including myself. I went live on Friday and said, this is an incredible announcement because now they've just priced Indians out of the American labor market. Now, finally, maybe some of these tech jobs can go to American college graduates because who would want to pay an Indian $100,000 more? Now it's cheaper to do American. But, of course, we should not be surprised that a few days later, it turned out that the entire policy was a lie. It wasn't 48 hours later that we found out that no, it was not a $100,000 per year fee. It was a $100,000 one-time fee. It's a one-time fee, which defeats the whole purpose. Because the thing about H-1B is that it's renewable. You can renew it every year for many years. You renew it every 3 years. And after 6 years, you get eligible for a green card. Now, over 6 years or longer, do you think an employer would find it worthwhile to invest at the outset $100,000? Of course they're willing to do that. $100,000 divided by 6 is nothing compared to $100,000 times 6. If you have to bring on an H-1B visa for 3 years is how you renew it, that's $300,000. That's $100K per year. You're tacking that onto the salary. As opposed to you pay $100,000 at the start and you can renew it indefinitely, well, then that's nothing. And these tech companies, they need the labor now more than ever. Now that AI is supposed to be the next big technological boom, now that that's supposed to bolster the GDP and create this unprecedented economic growth, of course they're going to pay for AI engineers, for developers, programmers, whatever, for the new chip manufacturing plants and new chip fabrication facilities. Of course, they're going to invest $100,000 up front. That's nothing to them. And what's particularly egregious about this is that they literally just straight up lied. Howard Lutnick said 4 or 5 times on Friday, it's per year, it's per year, it's $100,000 per year. Then we saw the text of the order and they said it's not per year, it's one time. So they just lied. This guy's a clown. Howard Lutnick is a clown. And frankly, so is Trump. That's a lie. And here's the worst part about it. Well, let's get to that in a moment. They lied about another aspect of it as well. When we found the text of the executive order, we found that not only is it not a per year fee, it's a one-time fee, we also found out that it doesn't apply to the existing H-1B visa holders. So there's hundreds of thousands of H-1B visa holders currently in America. They authorize 140,000 per year, and that cap is met every single year for decades. Every single year for decades, 140,000 new H-1B visas are giving out, and those accumulate. So we've got tons of H-1B workers currently in America, currently taking and sitting on good tech jobs that Americans cannot have, getting what should be good, high-paying jobs. This executive order doesn't apply to them. It only applies to any new H-1B visa holders, any new H-1B visa applicants. So it doesn't apply to the hundreds of thousands of existing foreign labor. It only applies to the new applicants. And for the new applicants, it's not yearly, it's one time. So while we're flooding America with cheap foreign labor, well, Silicon Valley just has to pay a little bit more money to the federal government. Here is why this is so evil. Let's be very clear about what happened. This is what people are missing about this, okay? Why is it that we thought this was a good thing? Why is it that we are against H-1B? It's because we want Silicon Valley companies to create and generate real wealth for Americans. Silicon Valley is maybe the only sector in America that is still making things, that is still growing at a very high rate. Silicon Valley, the software that they create, the innovations they create, this is our gold. This is our oil. The entrepreneurship, the research and development, the market that America provides, this is what makes Silicon Valley rich. And Silicon Valley should be making America rich. In Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, in the Emirates, they sell oil. They sell oil, it makes their country rich, and they use the money they make to invest in their people. They give their people money. They give their people an education. They give their people services, amenities. They provide law and order. They provide top-rate medical care, entertainment. They literally just give their people a stipend. It's unbelievable. They have this resource. It makes them rich, and they make their people rich. They make their people wealthy with it. Our oil, our gold is Silicon Valley. It's the entrepreneurship here. And if America's public institutions, if American consumers, if the American market, if American entrepreneurship, the American system, if that has made Silicon Valley rich, and that is driving the profits of Wall Street, and that is driving the profits of the billionaires, that should be making Americans wealthy too. They should spread the wealth to Americans. And what is one of the ways that you would spread that wealth? You should give Americans those jobs. The AI jobs, the software jobs, the dev jobs, the engineering jobs, those jobs should be given to young Americans. If somebody is making good money and in the most advanced, important, prestigious, powerful, lucrative sectors, those all-important positions should be staffed by Americans. That should be an investment in American human capital. Silicon Valley should be paying for American education. They should be paying for Americans to get educated. They should be paying for top-rate talent to be scouted. They should be paying for those people's health care, their housing. They should be raising them up to be the smartest, most brilliant, most elite people in the world. If we have a technocracy, to the extent that we have something like that, to the extent that we have a rule by experts, a rule by technologists or technocrats, it should be Americans that have those positions. They should be the ultra wealthy. They should be the super class that runs America, that runs the world. Instead, what does Silicon Valley do? They betray America. Silicon Valley is run by foreigners for foreigners. It is run by foreigner entrepreneurs for their profits, And they exploit foreign labor inside America to help themselves. And they do it inside our country, extractively. There's something deeply evil about this. So why did Americans celebrate when Howard Lutnick said, we're going to charge you $100K per year? Because we said, finally, Silicon Valley will work for America. Not to make China rich, not to make Indians rich, not to make Indians Americans, but Silicon Valley would work for America. Americans work for Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley works for America. It makes Silicon Valley wealthy. It makes America wealthy. We thought that that would be a step in the right direction and help give Americans a leg up. But the reason why they passed this policy, what is hidden inside the deception here, what's the difference between $100K per year and a one-time $100K payment? I'll tell you the difference. What $100K per year does is it prices Indians out of that labor market. What a one-time $100K payment does is it lets Indians keep coming in, but it just gives the government money. Understand the difference? A one-time $100,000 payment is not prohibitively expensive. All it does is create a slight barrier to entry. You pay the toll, and then the Indians are home free. You pay the toll, and then you still get the pipeline flooding America with cheap labor. So what, in effect, does the one-time payment do? It does nothing to deconstruct the pipeline of foreign labor. If anything, it just gives an incentive to bring in more foreign labor than ever. What it does by charging $100K is it just pads the government with a little bit more money. And when you understand the other policies that were announced the same day, this makes a lot more sense. Because what were the other policies? In addition to the H-1B policy, which they lied about, they also announced a $1 million and a $5 million citizenship program. If a foreigner gives the government $1 million, they become a citizen. If a foreigner gives the government $5 million, they become a citizen and they don't have to pay taxes in America. So what are they really doing here? Every new H-1B applicant has to pay us $100K. Every rich foreigner that wants citizenship has to give us $1 million or $5 million. This is a money grab. This is a money grab for the federal government. That's what this is about. They want to flood the country with foreigners. Our citizenship is for sale. Voting, citizenship, all the benefits that American citizenship, our fucking birthright, confers, they're selling it for cash. They're selling it for cash. Just like they're selling the right to flood America with cheap labor. That's what this is about. This is a cash grab for the federal government, which is insolvent. The debt is hovering around $36 trillion. The deficit is $2 trillion per year. The interest payment is going way up because the federal funds rate is extraordinarily high compared to what it was for 20 years. The country is going bankrupt. And so what the government is trying to do is to raise as much money as possible through tariffs. They're trying to raise money by selling citizenship and charging a toll for foreign labor, while they continue flooding the country with foreign labor and foreign millionaires and billionaires. Now, here's the point. They deliberately misrepresented it. The deeper point is they knew that Americans voted for Trump to be America first when it comes to the labor market. They knew that if the base heard that we're charging $100K per year, that we would think that was America first. They intentionally lied to sell their real agenda, which is to keep flooding the job market with foreign labor while doing a cash grab. And if you charge a $100K one-time fee, the government is going to want a lot more H-1Bs. Because the more H-1B visa applications you can approve, the more $100,000 checks are going to come in. If anything, it just justifies eliminating the cap on H-1Bs. The government is going to want as many H-1B applications as they can file because that's $100,000 a pop. So not only is it not what was promised, it's actually the opposite of what was promised. And they lied about what it was to sell you the opposite of what you actually wanted. A cash grab for the government and actually increasing the pipeline of foreign labor. That's the Trump administration. That's what they do. And this is why we say you fell for it again, because this is how they operate. They're telling you something like this. They're telling you that when we make promises and don't deliver, it's because we need more time. We need a bigger majority. We need more votes. We need more money. When in reality, they're just lying to you. Like, that's the game. Every election cycle, they lie to your face and they say, we're going to do mass deportations. They know they're not doing that. They know that's not going to happen. They're misrepresenting that to you. They know you want that. They know if they promise you that, you will vote for them. They have no intention of delivering it. And then when they win and they pass $150 billion for border enforcement, then they give a speech and say, yeah, we're not going to deport any illegal immigrant that has a job. They campaign and they say, we're going to put American workers first. We're going to protect the job market. They say things like, we're going to charge $100K per year per H-1B so that Americans can get these jobs. They're lying. They know they have no intention of doing that. The next day it comes out, it's a one-time fee, probably so that they can blow up the cap on foreign labor and they can make a lot of money doing it. And then once that happens, the shills go on Twitter and then they tell you Trump is really trying his best, but he's confused. Well, but the forces inside the government are fighting us. This is why we need to vote in the midterms to strengthen our majority. That's why we say you fell for it again. Because earnest Americans, they want the same thing every year for 30 years. Every year for 35, 40 years, people have gone to the polls and here's what they want. They want fewer immigrants. They want fair trade. They don't want foreign wars and they don't want corruption. This is basically what people are voting for 40 years. We're tired of seeing illegal immigration and open borders. We're tired of free trade, which is taking everybody's jobs and manufacturing and factories, making us all materially poorer. We're tired of bank bailouts, corporate tax cuts, quantitative easing, inflation. And we're tired of fighting in Iraq. Like, that's what we voted for 40 years. And whether you vote for it when it's Obama, whether you vote for it and it's Trump, you just get more of the same all the time. That's the problem inherent in all of it. So make no mistake about what they did. This wasn't an oopsie. Oh, well, we said 100K per year. We meant one time. No, this was a calculated deception. They lied. They knew the base would get excited for it. And then they thought in the fine print, it would contain the opposite of what they told you they were doing, stabbing you in the back. It doesn't get worse than that. That's Howard Lutnick. That's your Jewish commerce secretary, the most powerful commerce secretary in generations, who is a Jew that was friends with Epstein, that Trump hired. That is who is doing it to you. And that's that. I want to move on. I want to get into our featured story, which is about the ICE shooter.
All right, let's get right to it. I'm not going to hold y'all for too long. I'm just going to touch on both topics that he so far was discussing. The one with Tucker, Candace, we know that they have the whole pettiness, and then we'll move on to the H-1B visas. All right, so my takeaway with Tucker, Candace, and Nick, and some of the things that he's mentioning with Tucker. First off, when I heard Tucker's speech, we all knew what Tucker was talking about. We all knew what Tucker was insinuating. For Tucker to then come out and act as if anybody who thought that he was insinuating or referencing that Jews killed Jesus, and perhaps this is a similar situation that happened with Charlie Kirk, you're being a bit naive, in my opinion. And also, for Tucker, hold on. So, and the reason why I'm laughing is because I actually think that Tucker denying it is even going to piss people off even more. I think that him actually denying this is going to piss people off even more. And I think that he knows exactly what he's doing. See, I look at Tucker and Candace a bit differently. I look at them a bit differently, where I see that Tucker is being strategic. Tucker's being strategic where he's saying certain things and then, nothing to do with that. Like, what? That's what you took away from that? Acting as if we're dumb. Candace, and I don't even think Tucker's acting as if we're dumb, because I think Tucker's just really messing with people. I think he's just messing with people. And it's funny because in a lot of ways, you could say that he's doing exactly what Bibi Netanyahu's doing. It's like, we clearly see what you're doing, Bibi, but then you act as if, oh my God, that's insane. Bibi, and Israel leadership, for y'all to act as if we don't see what's going on right in front of our faces with Palestine and the genocide that's going on, where the majority of the world is agreeing on this particular thing. Like, and then y'all turn around and still act like the victims, as if this is all just based on, or I was going to say all based on October 7th, but all justified and rationalized based on October 7th. That's insane. Now Tucker's using the same type of strategy where I think Candace is just one of those people where you back certain people into a corner and you fire her from her job. You make it very hard for her. I would say make it very hard for her to make money. You limit a lot of her opportunities and maybe cancel her or try to get her canceled. That's what I think was happening with Candace. And Candace just got to the point where she's like, you know what? All the energy that they just put on me, now I'm just coming out like a bat out of hell. It's like, you ever seen like a mother bear or something, like you mess with she's just not with the whole, you're going to bully me. She's going to use that same energy to go at you just as hard, whether it costs her even more opportunities. It doesn't matter. She is just that pit bull that is just going to keep going at you. Tucker, I see, is a little bit more strategic. I think that they're both leaning into the same thing, but they're just going about it in completely different ways. And Dan Bilzerian, Nick brought up that Tucker's calling them out. He's calling them out directly. Tucker was calling them out directly. Like, bro, you're not going to finesse me with, you sitting down there eating hummus, and then Tucker's trying to act as if, I don't know if y'all saw all of Tucker's response. Well, I guess Nick played all of Tucker's response, but him talking about acting as if, well, yeah, I eat hummus at all my favorite Arab countries, like, or whatever he was saying. Tucker, I'm not even... I was getting ready to say I'm not even mad at Tucker. I think that Tucker's figured out what strategy he wants to use to address this situation, and that's what he's going with. Candace perhaps the same way. Now, I don't think when Nick says that, Tucker's acknowledging that it had nothing to do with the Jewish people or nothing to do with Israel, that's not my takeaway from when I hear Tucker. I think that Tucker's just playing with people. He's playing in people's faces. When I heard Tucker's speech, there's no other way that I could walk away from it other than the way that I actually did walk away from it, which was pausing it as soon as he started talking, as soon as he started saying these things and looking around like, Like, yo, exactly how Dan Bilzerian came away from it. And then Tucker to say, only people that are, looking at it like this are anti-Semites and people who are like the heavy duty Zionists. All right, Tucker, I'm neither one of those things. And that's exactly what I got from it. And I'm sure a lot of y'all got the same thing from it. And maybe y'all see yourself in one of those categories, the, super Zionist or an anti-Semite, but there's just no way that I feel that any common sense human being could look at that and see anything else. I'm just being totally honest, but I don't know. Y'all tell me, maybe y'all see it differently, but that's that whole situation. Nick definitely feels like it's controlled opposition. And in a lot of ways, that's how Tucker's behaving. If I didn't believe that Tucker was just messing with people, like I really think that Tucker's just messing with people where he comes across and he says, I'll just deny it. That's the same thing Bibi does. I'll just deny it. I'll put exactly what I want out there. People can take exactly what I'm intending them to take away from it. But then when they question me about it, I'll act as if he's almost gaslighting them, right? Maybe that's the same thing that Bibi Netanyahu does with us. So if I did not think that Tucker, let me rephrase it. If I thought that Tucker was backpedaling from this, then I would say that it's controlled opposition. But I think the impact of what Tucker already said, let's say at the memorial, or what Tucker said at the last event that he spoke at with Charlie Kirk, when a lot of people were mad, Zionists were mad, or Israel's, I don't know, across the board, people were mad that support Israel and Zionism. I think that the impact of him saying those things is so much more significant than him afterwards coming out and saying, oh, no, I wasn't referring to that. And I think he knows that. So other than that, I would say that it was controlled opposition. I don't really see how Candace Owens is controlled opposition, but I do see how there's a difference between what Nick Fuentes and Tucker and Candace are willing to acknowledge. It's clear that Nick has an issue with the Jewish influence overall. If we're being real, there is a strong Jewish influence in America. It just is what it is. And I mean, it's obvious. All you have to do is say, and this is the thing, you can't have with AIPAC, you can't have it both ways. Is AIPAC an Israeli organization? Okay, if you say no, it's not an Israeli organization, then that means that it's a Jewish American organization, right? So if it's a Jewish American organization and it's one of the organizations that has the most influence when it comes to politics across the board, Democrats and Republicans, how can you not look at that and say that there's an overwhelming Jewish influence? Matter of fact, the only other group that may have as big of an influence when it comes to Democrats and Republicans, well, I just thought of another one. I was going to say what Nick goes on to talk about with the H-1B visas, which is Silicon Valley. But the other one would be Big Pharma. We know who's running the country. It's the people that influence both Democrats and Republicans. The people that are above, I'm aligning with Democrats against those Republicans, or I'm aligning with Republicans against those Democrats. It's the ones that don't care because they put money in both, so they're going to get their agenda done regardless. Those are the people who run the country. So when Nick sits here and says it's not about Israel, you can't have it both ways. Is AIPAC directly related to Israel? Because if it is, then we can say that that's Israel. But if it's not, then we have to say that it's a Jewish American organization. So if it's a Jewish American organization, then a lot of the things that Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and a whole lot of other people complain about, putting Israel first, you can't say it's Israel. You have to say it's a Jewish American thing. And a lot of people, I believe, are scared to say it's a Jewish thing rather than just saying that it's a Israeli or Zionist thing. I'm just pointing out how I see it. Y'all let me know if I'm missing something, but I don't think that you can have it both ways. There's a reason why AIPAC doesn't have to register as a foreign lobbying group, right? Because if it was truly a foreign lobbying group, they would have to register as a foreign lobbying group. So now we're saying it's an American group. So within that American group, that will separate it completely from Israel. It's just Jewish Americans. So when we look at the impact of what that particular group, AIPAC, and what we're calling a Jewish American group has on our politics, then what's wrong with pointing that out? That's a different thing than pointing out the issues that you have with Israel or the issues that you have with Zionism. It's a totally different thing. So I think that's the difference between what I see that may cause a rift between Nick and then Candace and Tucker. And when I say that may cause the rift, I think that a lot of times when people are on the same sides and agree with each other a lot, right? They agree with each other on a majority of things. A lot of times those will be the most fiercest conflicts because it's okay. We agree on the same thing, but now it's how do we go about fixing it? What's the strategy? Oh, I'm putting myself on the line a little bit more than you. So those are the conflicts that we end up seeing rather than Nick, Candace, and Tucker even having conflicts with people that agree with them far less than they agree with each other. People on the far other end of the spectrum, they don't even have those disagreements because they're almost like fighting for a fan base. You know what I mean? Like Candace Owens is not fighting with Jasmine Crockett for a fan base. Maybe she is. I don't know. Tucker Carlson's not fighting with Jasmine Crockett for a fan base. Is that a better example? However, Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes may be fighting for a fan base, just like Nick and Charlie Kirk may have been fighting for a fan base. And a lot of people will say, like Nick has said, Charlie Kirk, in a lot of ways, that was his greatest adversary, Nick Fuentes. Not his greatest adversary. His greatest adversary wasn't on the other side. His greatest adversary was somebody that agreed where they agreed with on a lot more things than people on the other side that they never spend time or waste time arguing with. So that's where I see it there. And a lot of these things that come up, we got to understand when we're providing all this aid to another country, when it seems like this other country is the reason why the Epstein files can't come out, the JFK files can't come out, and then you add that to the fact that now we're supporting them to do things that the majority of the country does not agree with. And then it gets to the point where it's like, okay, not only do we not agree with it, but we feel like we're supporting a genocide. So it just keeps building and building. The questioning is going to build as well. Now we're going to associate all these things that we can't do because we don't have money. And we're going to start pointing out and pointing a finger towards them. Well, we don't have health care. So why are we giving them money? They're able to provide all their people health care. Why can't we build the wall? We're giving money to all of them for them to defend their country. Why can't we defend our country? Why are we in so much debt, but then providing money for them? Why are they able to make interest money on the payments that we're giving them to support their military efforts, but the interest money, they can spend it however they want? And what's different than us providing aid for them? Well, they get the lump sum, so that's how they're able to capitalize on the interest. It's not like with other countries where we just give them the money as needed throughout the year. Israel's is a lump sum that they keep in the banks here so they can accumulate and accrue interest. Also, Israel's allowed to use a percentage to buy their own, I believe it's a small percentage, but a percentage nonetheless, to buy their own weapons from their own military. So it's like, why is all this aid? Then you even come down to, why can't we have free speech? Well, free speech was okay. And that, matter of fact, was what Donald Trump and the Republicans were pushing for until people started talking about Israel. And I guess saying the quiet parts out loud with a lot of these things, right? So I don't, it's just they keep doing it to themselves. And when I say they, I mean Donald Trump, I mean Bibi Netanyahu, I mean Israel, I mean the Republicans, I mean Howard Lutnick, all of these people that are prioritizing Israel's efforts before they prioritize the American citizens. That's who I'm talking about, just to be very clear. So let's move on to the H-1B visas, another situation where Americans are not being prioritized. This is clearly not America first. It just contradicts a lot of the things that Donald Trump has said in the past. It just doesn't make any sense. You got Howard Lutnick, saying that it's an annual fee, doubling down, saying that this is the annual thing with the H-1B visas. Then Karoline Leavitt, and we played this on the last video, she's coming out saying like, oh, no, it's not annual. Well, clearly, if Howard Lutnick was bragging about it being annual, now they're saying it's not annual, you could understand how a lot of people would be frustrated with this. You could understand how a lot of people would say this is not putting America first. That's a huge difference, like Nick pointed out, having to pay $600,000 rather than $100,000. So at a one-time fee, I'm saying. So this is or 100,000, however many years you have to pay it until they can get their green cards or however it works. But this is a problem. This This is like I said before, another example of these industries that truly control Democrats and Republicans. This is another example. So just like a lot of people were saying, you know, Trump didn't get along with the Zuckerbergs, with all these other tech giants, even Elon Musk to a certain point before, years earlier. Now there's a reason why. When, what was it, his inauguration, and you saw where they were sitting, you saw they had the floor seats. There's a reason why. There's a reason why. You put the money up. You put the bread up. This is what my bro Queez always says. This is what Steve always says. Follow the money. We follow the money. If you want to get your questions answered, you follow the money. If you want to make sense out of something that is not consistent, that's hypocritical, that contradicts itself, follow the money. Follow the money. So let's think about, I wrote down in my notes, you know, think about all the things that Trump promised and is reneging on. Reneging. That's not a Nick Fuentes term. That's a Spades term. Come on, bro. It's mostly based on, all right, so get serious. Think about the things that Trump is promising and reneging on. It's mostly based on what? Putting Israel first, putting Silicon Valley first, and the group that I mentioned outside of that controls the Democrats and Republicans, putting Big Pharma first in a lot of these different things. Where a lot of the things that RFK Jr. may have been pushing at a certain time, he's had to, you know, reel it in a little bit. These are who are controlling our country. This is who's controlling our country: Silicon Valley, Israel, and Big Pharma. When we look at the things that the actual American citizens want, and these are some of the common sense things that all Americans can agree on. Like most Americans can agree on, like, hey, we got to figure out a way to provide more opportunities for Americans to work. Like we can agree on that. Most Americans can agree, like, okay, the border's gotten out of control. It's been a Republican issue, Democrat issue. We have to figure out a way to address that. We may have different strategies, but this is a problem. Most Americans can agree that, okay, there's an opioid crisis. Like Big Pharma is not always giving us, you know, they're obviously trying to make a profit rather than actually being true to healthcare. Like, I think that most Americans who have a certain decency about them can agree on these things, but why are these the things that Trump is reneging on and going in a different direction than he even campaigned on? I think most Americans would say, yo, let the Epstein files out. Just another example. So it seems like Silicon Valley and maybe, well, Big Pharma, we know, and Israel as well, they've adopted the FUBU approach, for us, by us. What did Nick say? That Silicon Valley is taking advantage of America for their foreign country, and they're doing it to uplift their foreign country. Like, this is a true FUBU approach. Now, it would be amazing if we had that for us, by us, AKA America first, make America great again approach with actual Americans, Trump. That would be amazing. That would be amazing. So while they're making their people rich, what's happening to our country? And I think Nick brought up the example where he was talking about Saudi or somebody, where he's like, you know, they use their form of gold. They use it. Was it oil or gold? I forget what he was saying. But the point is, they use their most valuable resource in order to pump into their people, in order to uplift and empower their people. Silicon Valley does not do that. Silicon Valley does not make Americans wealthy. They're not making our country wealthy. They're taking from our country. And there's a lot of other groups that are doing the same. And not prioritizing America first. This is, I think we talked about on the last show with the tariffs. It's the same thing. The same principle behind the tariffs, to create more opportunities in the workplace for Americans. So if Trump's energy was to get rid of H-1B visas in 2016, how did it get to this point? Who influenced Trump? Aren't you supposed to be more strong in your stance in your second term when you don't have to run for re-election than your first one? I don't know. But this is an example of what happens when the decision makers don't have to suffer from their decisions. None of these decisions are going to impact Trump. None of these decisions are going to impact Trump's team. None of these decisions are going to impact the people that Trump takes money from. They're just going to impact the American citizens. And clearly, when it comes to politics, that is what a lot of politicians prioritize. And Trump is proving that he is no different. So I'll leave y'all with that. Not too much of an outro, but appreciate y'all as always. Make sure that y'all are liking, subscribing, turn your notifications on. And most importantly, let me know my blind spots. Let me know what I'm missing. Let me know what I'm missing. I'm trying to elevate. I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to make sure that I'm seeing the full picture. So if you guys can paint something in that picture for me or bring my attention to it, I'm always appreciative of it. So on that note, I'll let y'all go and I'll see y'all soon on the next video.
It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.